Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. The reason he had been sighing was because patrolling was so boring. There wasn't even a cat stuck in a tree. The next time Kakashi-sensei uses that excuse, I'm going to go ballistic. Naruto thought to himself. At least things weren't too bad. He had been paired up with Big Bear and Little Bear, since Middle Bear was out sick. They were two female ANBUs with bear masks and were well known in the Anbu for being one of the best three-man teams. However, the two of them were completely different from one another. Where Little Bear was quiet and deadly accurate, Big Bear was loud and destructive. Currently, the three of them were on a roof as Big Bear argued with Little Bear about which type of killing blow was better. I'm telling you Little, an explosive tag to the base of the neck is the best. It ensures that the target is dead, provides a distraction, and it's fun as hell. Big Bear replied with a laugh. Big, please, Little started before a chorus of loud screaming down below grabbed their attention. The three members looked over the edge to see Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi being chased by an enraged Sakura and Ino. I got this Big, Little. The brats probably just said something to piss them off. Naruto replied as he grabbed his sword and sheathed it. Alright, doctor. Let us know if you need backup. Big Bear told him just as he was jumping off the roof and heading in the direction he had seen the Konohamaru ninja squad run off to. Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi were running for their lives. The incident had all started when they had overheard a pink-haired girl talking to a blonde-haired girl about their Ni-chan, Naruto. The pink girl had called him an idiot and was happy that he wasn't wasting her time by asking her out anymore. The blonde had replied saying that Naruto had no tastes, as he had been trying to get the pink-haired girl's attention instead of her own, not that he would have stood a chance. This made the three of them mad, so the three academy students jumped out of the tree they had been hiding in and in rather loud voices declared that their Naruto Ni-chan wouldn't be caught dead with a billboard brow girl or an anorexic blonde bitch. These statements pissed off the two kunoichi, which lead to them chasing down the three academy students. Konohamaru quickly turned a sharp corner and slammed into something large and hard. He fell back onto the ground as a voice above him said, "That hurt." Udon, Moegi, Sakura, and Ino, who were both staring at these foreign shinobi. Standing before them was a guy in a black jumpsuit with purple kabuki face paint and a mummy-wrapped package on his back. As well as a tall tanned girl in a lavender battle kimono with dirty blonde hair tied back into four short ponytails and had a large fan on her back. The insignia on their forehead protectors indicated that they were from Suna. Slightly behind the two Suna nins were three more foreign shinobi. One was a guy with light blonde hair with dark skin and was carrying long katana at his side. The other two were both female, one as dark-skinned as the guy with long red hair and also carrying a long katana at her side. The last female was tall with short blonde hair. She was wearing a short black battle kimono and had a cold impassive look on her face. The insignia on their forehead protectors indicated that they were from Kumo. Sakura and Ino, both enviously noted, that the three foreign kunoichi were more endowed than they were, but didn't look much older than them. Judging by the stances of the ninjas, they had just interrupted what looked to be the starting of a brawl. Come here, Pipsqueak, growled the boy in the black jumpsuit as he picked up Konohamaru by the scruff of his shirt. Crap, what should I do? There aren't any Jonin around. Sakura thought desperately to herself. Before anything could happen, a voice from the side yelled out. What's going on here? 10 pairs of eyes turned to see a short, young-looking guy in long black pants, a black shirt under a large black trench coat, and a featureless black mask with only an orange slash over the mask. He had a metal link chain wrapped around his waist a few times as a belt. Who the air you? Asked the guy holding Konohamaru. Before the guy could reply, Konohamaru yelled out, oh crap, it's the doctor. He's come to operate on me. Please don't operate on me doctor, I'm not sick. Konohamaru knew that the doctor was actually Naruto, from having burst into a meeting between him and his grandfather, the third Hokage. The young boy had been sworn to secrecy and was told he would face severe punishments if he told anyone. Konohamaru, who's the doctor? Asked Moegi, in frightened voice. The doctor is the most sadistic interrogator in the ANBU's torture and interrogation unit of Konoha. Rumor is that he got in by ripping a guy's heart and told him he'd get it back if he talked. The young boy replied. This statement caused mixed reactions from everyone. Udon and Moegi became more frightened, Sakura and Ino were creeped out, and the foreign nin looked on in slight disbelief. Oh, that's no rumor. The doctor replied as he reached into his pocket and pulled out an object the size of a large rock. As he held it out to them, everyone could see that it was a heart. Looking at the heart in the interrogator's hand, the guy dropped Konohamaru to the ground. The academy student quickly ran over to his friends. Darn, you let him go. Now I can't operate on you. The doctor replied as he put the heart away. However, it looks like I might get to operate on the rest of you. What are you three doing out of class? He asked the Konohamaru ninja squad. Not waiting for an answer, he turned to Sakura and Ino and said, the two of you are to take them to the academy immediately after this is over. Now as for the rest of you, where are your papers? He asked as he turned around to face the foreign nin. If you are unable to provide your papers, then you'll have to face the consequences and I really hope you ladies don't have them. Why's that? Asked the long red-haired girl as she searched of her papers. She suddenly saw a shadow over her and looked to see the doctor standing right in front of her. Before she had time to react, his hand shot forward and oddly grasped her chin gently, his thumb softly rubbing over the front. It is said that true beauty is on the inside. So, with three kunoichi as beautiful as you on the outside, I can't help but want to see your inner beauty, he told her softly, but loudly enough for everyone else to hear it. Unable to stop herself, the girl blushed as she handed him her papers. He quickly gathered up the papers from the others. After looking over them for a moment, he handed them back to them while saying, Welcome to Konoha Kankuro-san, Temari-san, Samui-san, Karui-san, Omoi-san. Please enjoy your stay for the Chunin exam. Now, why did it seem like the three of you ladies were about to start ripping each other's heads off? The boy, now known as Omoi, took the lollipop he had in his mouth out and said, they were arguing over who had the largest chest. This caused the leaf kunoichi to remember that they didn't have any and others to glare at Omoi. The doctor stared at their chest. Well, the three of you all have wonderfully large chests, but if you want to know who has the biggest, why don't you go shopping? He suggested. The girls were unsure if this should be a compliment or an insult. Granted, he had called them beautiful, so it was taken as a compliment. Just how would shopping help us? Asked Temari. Simple. The three of you go into a clothing store and get your measurements taken for new dresses. When the tailor measures your chest, the girl with the largest measurement wins. Please try not to fight with each other on the street. You may, however, use a guest training field to fight. He explained to him. Even though it was stupid sounding, the simple logic behind it was sound. Once they were dismissed, the three kunoichi walked to the nearest clothing store. The doctor then dismissed Sakura and Ino, ordering them to take Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi back to the academy. The doctor then left to head back to Big Bear and Little Bear. Well, it wasn't much, but at least it wasn't boring and those kunoichi were gorgeous. Meanwhile, in the office of the third Hokage at the Hokage Tower, the Jonin senseis of Konoha's genin teams had assembled before the third. It should be obvious, by the members here, why you've been assembled. It will be properly announced 4 days from now. On the first day of the 7th moon the Chunin selection exam will begin. First, we will hear from those teaching the rookies. Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma. Well, are there any genin that you'd like to nominate for the Chunin exam? The third asked. Kakashi, leader of Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Uzumaki Naruto. Under the name of Hitaki Kakashi, I nominate them to take the Chunin exam. Kakashi said to the Hokage. The third nodded his head as Kakashi stepped back, while a few people murmured. Next, a red-eyed with raven black hair stepped forward. Kurenai, leader of Team 8, Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Under the name of Uehi Kurenai, I nominate them to take the Chunin exam. Kurenai said to the Hokage. The third nodded his head as Kurenai stepped back, while more people talked amongst themselves. Next, a tall man with a scraggly beard and a cigarette in his mouth stepped forward. Asuma, leader of Team 10, Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji, and Yamanaka Ino. Under the name of Sarutobi Asuma, I nominate them to take the Chunin exam. Asuma said to the Hokage. As Asuma stepped back, the minimal whispering was now up to outright talking. All of the rookies. Very rare indeed. The third commented to himself. Hold on a moment, cried a voice from the back. Everyone turned to see that Iruka was the speaker. What is it, Iruka? Asked the Hokage. I know I may be speaking out of place here, but those 9 were students of mine at the academy. They are all very talented, but it's too early for them to take the exam. They need more experience. I can't understand the Jonin's reasoning. I became a Chunin when I was 6 years younger than Naruto. Kakashi interjected. Naruto is different from you. Are you trying to crush them? The Chunin exam is, Iruka started to say. He would have continued, but was interrupted by Kakashi. They are always complaining about missions. Experiencing some pain may be good for them. Crushing them could be fun. What? Iruka yelled at him. Sorry, Iruka. That was just a joke. I can understand your feelings. It must upset you, but stay out of this. They are no longer your students. Right now, they are my soldiers. Kakashi told him, leaving no room for a rebuttal. Iruka grimaced, but fell back and let the proceedings continue. The 3 Jonin of the rookie team stepped to the side as the next person stepped forward. The next day, Kakashi met with his students and told them that he had nominated them for the Chunin exam. He gave them their papers and told them to be at the academy in 3 days, on the 3rd floor, to take it. As they walked down the street, Naruto looked down at his application and then to his teammates. So, how are we going to go about taking this exam? He asked them. What are you talking about, Naruto Baka? Replied Sakura, wondering what was going through the blonde idiot's mind. What I'm talking about is, we're a rookie team. Most teams wait a year or 2 before entering. Once word gets out that a rookie team is going to be in the Chunin exam, they'll all be aiming to take us out first. So, we need to intimidate the rest of them somehow. Naruto explained. Do you have something in mind? Sasuke asked, remembering Naruto's flair for pranks back at the academy. Well, here's what I know, so this is what I've got, Naruto said as he began to explain his plan to them. That's crazy, Naruto, Sakura said when the blonde finished. So crazy, in fact, that it just might work for us, Sasuke countered. After a few more minutes of talking, the 3 left for their weekly meal together. After the meal, they each left in a different direction to start implementing Naruto's plan. Naruto himself changed clothes and headed for the Anbu headquarters to speak to Ibiki. He quickly walked through the hallways, while saying, "Hi," and nodding to folks. Once he arrived at his sensei's door, he knocked hard. "Enter," came the voice from inside. Naruto opened the door to find Ibiki sitting at his desk going over some papers. Most likely for the exam. Naruto thought, oh himself. I take it you've heard Bandana-sensei? He asked. That you've been nominated for the Chunin exam? Yes, I have heard about it. Congratulations, Ibiki replied, looking up from his papers. Well, what's your opinion? Do you think I'm ready? He asked the scarred man. I do, but I wonder how this will change you. Everyone has a different experience with the exam. Now, since you've been nominated, you're off duty here until the exam is over. Ibiki told him. Naruto nodded his head and left. He had a lot to do in the next few days. Konoha Academy. Day of the Chunin exam. Sakura sighed to herself, as she waited for her teammates to arrive. She looked down at her new outfit. Gone was the red dress and shorts she had only days before. Now, she was wearing black shinobi shoes with long black pants. The left knee of the pants had been torn open. She had 3 kunai holsters on her right thigh and 2 pouches of supplies on the back of her belt. She wore a short red shirt showing off her stomach. Over her shirt she had a dark red leather trench coat with the white circle her dress had on the back and a hood. Currently, the hood was up over her now braided hair. At the tip of the braids was a mini kunai. Over her pale green eyes were shades with a matching tint to her iris. Her hands and arms were wrapped in chakra-storing bandages. Sakura leaned back against the tree and looked at the weapon next to her. Naruto had taken his teammates' weapons shopping and bought them weapons suiting to their personalities. At first she hadn't liked that she had gotten a war hammer, but after learning about it, she'd thought maybe it wasn't too bad. The entire thing was polished steel. The handle was 5 feet in length, while the hammer was 15 inches thick and a foot and a half long. She found out from the smithy that it was ordinary war hammer. Putting a little bit of chakra into it would make the hammer several times lighter and it would lose any of its force when hitting someone. If she turned the war hammer around and summoned chakra to the front of the war hammer, the back would open and fire hundreds of Senbon needles at her opponent. If she summoned chakra to the tip of the handle and twisted it, the hammer would split open and a sinister-looking scythe would emerge. The war hammer had been named Thor. "Hey, Sakura," a voice to the side called, snapping her out of her thinking. She looked over to see Sasuke walking towards her. "Hello, Sasuke-kun," she replied as Sasuke leaned against the tree next to her. Sasuke's outfit had also changed. He no longer had his white shorts and navy blue shirt on. Instead, he had on long light gray pants and a navy blue high-collar tunic. On the tail of the tunic was the Uchiha clan symbol. It looks very similar to the tunic of the Sound 4. His hands and arms were wrapped in white chakra-storing bandages. He had the same number of kunai holsters and pouches as Sakura and they were in the same place. Over his eyes was a pair of shades with a bright red tint. Tied to his waist on the back was a sword. It was a short sword. When he summoned chakra to the handle, the sword would split, becoming 2 weapons. Also, the blades could be set ablaze. The blade had been named Levadine. "I see we're all here," a voice in front of them said. The 2 members of Team 7 looked to see the last member of their team walking towards them. "About time you showed up, Naruto. It's almost time," Sakura said. Naruto was no longer wearing his black shirt. He still had the same long black pants on. But now, he had on a long black trench coat. The top of the coat was closed with silver buckles and opened around the bottom where his legs were. On the right sleeve was the mist insignia etched in orange. On the back of his coat was the kanji for Q, also in orange. The sleeves were tight at the shoulders, but widened greatly as they went down. The large hood of the coat was up, covering his blonde hair. His face was wrapped like Zabuza's with black chakra-storing bandages. He wore shades with a bright orange tint. On his arms were his gauntlets, the immortals. "Are we ready?" he asked them. Seeing his teammates nod, Naruto turned around and they headed towards the academy entrance. "What were you able to find out?" Sasuke asked in a whisper. "There's a small test first, to separate the participants from the complete idiots. After that, the real tests begin. The first one tests the participants' knowledge. Next is the team's ability to survive. After that is the tournament held a little over a month from now. I don't know how each one is given out though. That information wasn't available to me," Naruto replied as he opened the door to go inside. "Do the 2 of you remember your lines?" he asked as they climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. "Yeah, and I still can't believe we're going to do this," Sakura replied. They had reached the landing to see that a group of genin had crowded around a room. Naruto looked to see that a pair of older-looking genin were blocking the door. He watched as Lee tried to get past and was brutally punched to the ground. "That's not like Lee-kun," He's too fast to get hit by such a slow punch. Plus, its had is to hit him back, much less to the ground. Naruto thought as a double bun-haired girl walked forward only to be slugged across her face hard. That must be one of Lee Kun's teammates. He thought while the blockers taunted them. Ready? Sasuke asked his teammates. Naruto and Sakura both nodded. As one, they walked forward, shoulder to shoulder. Naruto would be walking by the genin blocking the door, Sakura in between them, and Sasuke would walk alongside the crowd of genin. As they were almost even to the blockers, the genin with spiky black hair spoke up, calling everyone's attention to them. Just where do you rejects think you're going? We're going to room 301. Sasuke replied as they stopped and looked at them. Yeah, well, this is room 301 and I say you aren't getting in. The other genin with a forehead bandana protector on replied. This isn't room 301, this is still the second floor, as we've only climbed one flight of stairs. Also, you're Genjutsu Ed. An academy student could see through that. We'll be leaving now. Sakura shot back. The three began to walk forward once again. As they became even with the pair, the one with spiky hair shot his hand out only to have it grabbed by the clawed gauntlet left hand of Naruto's. The genin tried to remove his hand, but Naruto's grip was too strong. Dude, what the hell? Let go. The genin yelled out, his hand slowly turning red. Naruto lowered his hand, forcing the genin to his knees. A moment later the mocking genin screamed in pain and the sound of his wrist being crushed filled the hall. Naruto released his hand and let the genin collapse on the ground. After the genin sobbed a few times over his wrist, Naruto drew his leg back and slammed it into the boy's face. He crashed into the wall and was knocked out cold. All three members of Team 7 glared at the remaining genin, daring him to try and stop them. The boy grabbed his partner and disappeared. Very foolish standing in our way like that, Naruto said as they started walking again. They stopped as they saw Rock Lee walking towards them. Hey Lee-kun, how's it going? Naruto asked his sparring partner. It's going well, Naruto-kun. But why did you do that? The green spandex wearing boy asked. Oh, that wasn't a genin. That was a chunin. Naruto replied simply. Lee nodded his head before turning his head to Sakura and saying, Hi, my name is Rock Lee. So, you're Sakura, let's go out together. I'll protect you until I die. Lee flashed her his good guy pose. Before Sakura could reply, Naruto replied for her. She'd love to go out with you Lee. Here's some information about her. Her full name is Haruno Sakura. Her hobbies are playing trivia and memorization. She lives on. Naruto would have continued had he not been bashed on the head by Sakura. Shut up, Naruto. She growled out. She then turned to Lee and said, Sorry, but no. The three continued walking again, after Sasuke had finished his confrontation with the pupil-less white-eyed boy on Lee's team. After a brief fight between Lee and Sasuke, in which Sasuke was about to have his ass handed to him, they saw their sensei standing outside the room. They then learned that the exam can only be taken by teams of 3. With praise from their sensei, they stepped forward. Shock filled them as they stared out over the crowd of genin. There were shinobi from all over the continent. Suna, Kumo, Oto, Aim, Kusa, and Taki were all being represented. The three of them did their best to control their surprise. They were brought out of their thinking as a voice called out, Sasuke-kun. You're late. I haven't seen you for a while, so I've been waiting in excitement. The team turned to see Ino of Team 10, glomping Sasuke. Get off of our teammate, Ino. Sakura said as Sasuke forcibly removed Ino off of himself. Well, if it isn't, Sakura. Ino replied as she took in her rival's new appearance. Yeah, what? What's with the outfit? Asked the platinum blonde. You didn't expect us to stay the same, did you Ino? Replied Naruto. So, you guys are taking this stupid test too? Came a voice to the side. Looking over Team 7 saw the remaining members of Team 10 walk towards them, Shikamaru and Choji. Well, I see the idiot trio is here. Replied Naruto. Don't call us that, Naruto. Shikamaru said as he took careful notice of Team 7's new look. Hey, we found you guys, yelled a voice, approaching them. All 6 rookies glanced over to see the last remaining 6 rookies walking up to them. So, everyone is assembled, said the gray coat wearing Kiba of Team 8. You guys too, groaned out Shikamaru. I see that all 9 of this year's rookies are taking the exam. I wonder how far we'll get, Sasuke asked Kiba. You seem confident, Kiba, Sasuke replied to the dog user. That's cause we did a lot of training, so we won't lose to you. I doesn't matter how much training you do. As the weakest team, you won't get far. Sakura told them. What did you say? He yelled back. Your team is the weakest. The only member on your squad that actually a threat to anyone is Hinata. Shino is a close second, if he's fighting anyone but me. And you, Kiba, are the weakest. Naruto told him. Hinata blushed at Naruto's words, as Shino arched an eyebrow in response to Naruto's words. Kiba, on the other hand, tried to throw a punch at Naruto's face. He was quickly stopped as he felt 2 blades press against his neck and saw a shadow over his head. Naruto had the right-handed blade of the immortal out, as Sasuke had Levadine unsheathed. Both blades resting on Kiba's jugular, and Sakura had Thor hoisted in the air, ready to smash him. Hey, you guys should be a little quieter, came an older-sounding voice. All 9 of the rookies looked to see an older, silver-haired boy. The boy introduced himself as Kabuto. He told them to stop being so loud or it might cause a scene, as everyone was already on a short fuse. They learned that it was his 7th time to take the exam and, as a result, he had a lot of information about the exam in his info nin cards. He decided to share some info with them as they were rookies. He brought up a graph, showing them where each participant was from and how many there were taking the exam. Sasuke asked if he had info on individuals. Kabuto said if he had a name he should have it. Sasuke asked for info on Lee and some guy named Gaara. Lee, Naruto already knew about. But this Gaara guy was something else. With so many strong opponents taking the exam, some of the rookies began to lose confidence. Well, now is as good a time as any, Naruto thought to himself as he stepped forward. Sakura, Sasuke, who shall we kill first? He asked in a loud voice, catching everyone's attention. Sasuke smirked slightly and pointed to a team from the Hidden Rain. Sakura rolled her eyes as she pointed to the Hidden Sound team. Let's kill them, they replied in unison. They then began to argue slightly over who to kill first, until Naruto intervened. Guys, we'll kill both of them in the second exam, he told his teammates. This caused almost everyone in the room to shudder. Not everyone was taking Team 7's words so lightly. So, he thinks they can kill us? Asked a tall boy with spiky black hair. Let's play with them for a little bit, replied his long black-haired teammate. Good idea. He'll learn that sound shinobi can be quite deadly, said the bandaged face boy in front of them. The 3 shinobi ran forward towards Naruto. The spiky-haired boy and the girl with long hair jumped into the air and threw a few kunai at Naruto. Naruto batted the kunai away with his gauntlet. He was then taken by surprise as the last member of the sound team appeared in front of him and made a swipe at his head. Naruto stepped back in time, to avoid being hit. However, a second later his vision went haywire. Naruto summoned chakra to his feet to keep him upright, as he forced the bile back down into his stomach. You may want to improve before you make a declaration on killing someone, the bandaged face sound shinobi told him. Before Naruto could reply, a very familiar voice yelled out from the front of the room as it poofed into existence. Quiet down, you worthless bastards. There standing at the front of the room was Ibiki. Ibiki? Oh, shit. Naruto thought to himself. Ibiki explained that they would be taking the first part of the exam in the room. He told them to take a number and then sit at that assigned seat. Naruto sulked as he realized it was a paper test. The kind he was the worst with. Ibiki calmly explained the rules, after which, Naruto could feel his teammates staring holes into his back. Once the exam started, Naruto looked at his test paper and cringed at the first question. There's no way anyone can answer any of these. Naruto thought to himself, slowly starting to panic. Naruto calmed himself down and took a better look at the questions. These are high-level questions. Most of which I don't know, and I doubt most of the people in here do know. So, I'll answer in my own way, thought the blonde as he began to scribble down answers. 3 minutes later, he put his pencil down and flipped his test over. Naruto leaned back and propped his feet on the desk as he relaxed his head. Several of the examiners, including Ibiki, saw this. What is he doing? There's no way that Naruto could have finished so quickly. Ibiki thought. He'd be the first to admit that his apprentice had grown a lot in the past 5 months, but he still had a ways to go. A couple of minutes later, everyone stopped as a sound unlike any other filled the room. Naruto was snoring, rather loudly too. That idiot is sleeping. This is far too troublesome, thought Shikamaru. He calls me weak, yet he's too dumb to stay awake. Thought Kiba as his dog, Akamaru, gave him another answer. Hinata was blushing as the boy of her dreams was sleeping next to her. This guy is worse than Killer Bee Sensei, thought a golden-eyed, red-haired, Kunoichi of Cloud thought to herself. Surely, Naruto's not really stupid enough to be asleep. Sakura thought, praying to Kami that teammate wasn't stupid enough to fall asleep during a major test. She was disappointed, however, when Naruto spoke. No, please, Naruto mumbled. I couldn't eat another bite. Well, okay, Naruto smiled, sleeping. But only because you're such a cute bowl of ramen. Sakura banged her forehead onto the table. He actually is that stupid. When Naruto woke up, the hour was almost over. Ibiki told them that it was time for the 10th question. If they failed this question, they would remain genin forever. Several people began to leave, not wanting to fail. Naruto came face to face with a dilemma. He could stay and answer, and if he failed to answer correctly, he'd stay a genin. Naruto slammed his hand down on the desk and declared in a loud voice that even if he stayed a genin, he'd still become Hokage. Seeing that no one was leaving after Naruto's speech, Ibiki then smirked as he congratulated the remaining genin on passing the first part of the exam. Naruto's eyes bulged as Ibiki explained the reasoning of the test to a busty Suna Kunoichi. I can't believe that jerk. Well, at least it'll be easier now, Naruto thought to himself. Suddenly, a loud crash was heard as a figure busted through the glass. Never mind. This just got worse, Naruto thought, knowing that there was only one person in all of Konoha dumb enough to interrupt Ibiki's speech like this, and he knew who it was. All right, you worms. I'm Mitarashi Anko, the second examiner for the Chunin exam. Now, let's go, Anko yelled out in a loud voice. She then took notice of how many had passed and brought this to Ibiki's attention. She declared that once the second test was over, the numbers would be less than half. This statement had a few on edge again as they followed her out of the room to the second part of the exam. After about 45 minutes of walking, the genin found that they had been led to a thickly forested area, surrounded by a high metal chain link fence. The trunks of the trees were thicker than any other tree in all of Konoha. Many of the trees' trunks were almost as thick as base of the Hokage Tower. Please tell me we aren't where I think we are, Naruto thought as he stared into the foreboding forest. Welcome to the stage for the second exam. This is Training Ground 44, otherwise known as the Forest of Death, Anko announced happily. In fact, a little too happy. Shit. Naruto repeated over and over again in his mind. He had heard a couple of Anbu talking about this training ground. Training Ground 44 was a Jonin-level training ground. In fact, it had been reported more than once that a careless Jonin had gotten seriously injured by the forest. Inside were untold horrors as certain animals lived in the forest that lived nowhere else. Man-eating centipedes, giant tigers, acid-spewing plants, and more. Kiba had made the mistake of mocking Anko while she was telling them the name and got a kunai thrown at his cheek. The blade barely grazed him, but it was enough to leave a faint cut. Anko had then moved right behind him, with another kunai pressed against his neck. However, she quickly spun around to see a presence behind her. A tall Kusa-nin was standing right behind her with her thrown kunai in his tongue, to return it to her. Anko then explained the test to them, telling them that half would get a heaven scroll and the other half would get an earth scroll. She told them that a team would need all of its members alive and have both scrolls to continue, informing them that they would have to engage each other in battle if they wished to pass the second exam. They then had to sign release forms, as killing was part of the exam. After all the members of Team 7 signed the release, they went to turn their forms in and get their scroll. They were given a heaven scroll and assigned to Gate 12. As soon as the gates open, we run for it. Naruto said. Why? Asked Sakura. Simple. We're a rookie team, so everyone's going to be aiming for us, thinking that we're easy to take on. Plus, that little show at the start probably didn't help our chances. Sasuke told her. Minutes later, the air horn sounded, indicating the start of the second exam. The Jonin thrust the gate open and before he had reached to close it, Team 7 was already hidden by the thick forest. As they ran, Naruto summoned 15 clones and had 5 henge into perfect copies of Sasuke and another 5 into perfect copies of Sakura. For the next few hours, everything was going fine. Sasuke had recommended that they set a trap close to the tower. Since Naruto and Sakura had no problem with it, they agreed to it. Now, they just had to get there before anyone else. Suddenly, Naruto snapped to attention. Everyone, on the ground now. He yelled out. When they landed, Sasuke turned to him and said, "What's the problem, Dobi? We've got trouble up ahead. All of my clones were just expelled." Naruto told him. So, Sakura said, not seeing the significance of the situation. By something attacking them from behind and at the same time. Naruto explained to her. There's someone powerful up ahead. If we get separated then the enemy might try to disguise themselves as one of us. We should have a code word. Sasuke said. So that way, if the enemy gets it wrong, we'll know it's not one of us. What do you have in mind? Naruto asked him. I'll only say it once so listen carefully. Sasuke leaned forwards. We will ask for the Nin song, Nin machine. When asked, we answer with this. A large amount of loud enemies is the friend of the shinobi, hide and remain silent. A shinobi must understand the proper time, when the enemy is tired and ill-prepared. That's it, Sasuke said, giving them their code word. Sakura nodded her head having memorized it. Naruto, on the other hand, not so much. Man, why did it have to be one of those old sayings? I at remembering them, Naruto thought as he began to stand up from their sitting place on the ground, none of them ever acknowledging an odd reed sticking out of the ground. As he was standing up, he felt something brush against his cheek. Naruto swiped a hand at his cheek and saw that his was bleeding from a cut. Suddenly, out of nowhere came a massive wind blast from behind them. Unable to summon his chakra in time to stick to the ground, Naruto was sent flying. Well, this is going to. Naruto thought to himself, soon after he hit something hard and blacked out. Sasuke had hidden under a group of bushes as the wind died down. He had been separated from Sakura and Naruto during the gust. Carefully, he backed up out of the bushes. Sasuke-kun, he heard Sakura's voice behind him say. He spun around to face her with a kunai in hand. Stay away. What's the code word? Nin song, Nin machine. Sasuke asked the pink-haired shinobi. A large amount of loud enemies is the friend of the shinobi, hide and remain silent. A shinobi must understand the proper time, when the enemy is tired and ill-prepared. Sakura replied, giving Sasuke the code word. Sasuke lowered his kunai, now sure that it was Sakura. However, it was soon brought back up as the bushes to the side began to rustle. Out of the bushes walked Naruto. Are you guys alright? Naruto asked them. Naruto, what's the code word? Sakura asked. A large amount of loud enemies is the friend of the shinobi, hide and remain silent. A shinobi must understand the proper time, when the enemy is tired and ill-prepared. Naruto replied quickly. Sasuke smirked slightly and then threw his kunai hard at Naruto's chest. Sasuke, what are you doing? It's Naruto. Sakura yelled out. The real Naruto wouldn't be able to remember a song that long. The real one would have said, sorry, I forgot the stupid code word. Sasuke told her. The fake Naruto gave a sinister grin before poofing out of existence. Impressive. How did you know there would be a fake? The voice from inside the smoke of the cancelled henge asked. I knew you were listening from underground. There's no way Naruto could have remembered a code word like that, so I knew you had to be a fake. Sasuke replied as the smoke cleared enough to show their attacker. It was the Kusa Nin from earlier. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. The grass nin stated. You want my Earth Scroll, right? Since you guys have the Heaven Scroll. The grass nin asked. The ninja then opened his mouth and shoved the scroll down his throat. After swallowing the scroll completely, the grass nin's head was looking down at the ground. Let's begin the battle for each other's scroll, with our lives on the line. He said as he turned his gaze towards them. Death surrounded them. It was gripping them so tightly that it was impossible to breathe. Their bodies had been chewed upon and then were spat back out. Blood poured from everywhere, caking them like a warm gel. Neither could move as a kunai flew from the darkness and embedded itself deep into their foreheads. Then suddenly, it was all over. There were no mangled bodies, blood, or kunai in the forehead. But the feeling was still there. What was that? Was that a genjutsu? Sasuke asked himself, before his collapsed onto his hands and threw up. No, that was just fear. The killing intent in his eyes made us see death. Who the hell is this guy? Sasuke looked over to see Sakura shaking in fear, unable to move. The ninja then took out a kunai and threw it hard at Sakura. Sasuke stabbed himself in the thigh to overcome the fear and push Sakura out of the way. They tried to run, but were soon found by a snake. The snake got between them and forced them apart. As they went in different directions, the snake chose to go after Sasuke. Sasuke launched a barrage of kunai and shuriken at its head, killing it. However, they watched in horror as the grass nin emerged from the snake's body, telling them prey should always be trying to escape. Sasuke realized that he was too strong for them to face, so he tried to barter their escape by giving the grass nin their scroll. Sasuke watched in shock as the grass shinobi destroyed their scroll. The mysterious shinobi then summoned a very large snake and ordered it to kill Sasuke. As the snake launched forward, Sakura jumped in the way and slammed Thor down onto the snake's head. In retaliation, the shinobi threw a punch at Sakura's war hammer as she was raising it up for a second strike. The force of the blow destroyed the hammer and sent Sakura flying backwards. Seeing Sakura jump in like that forced Sasuke to think about his own cowardliness. His brother told him to cling to life. Sasuke then opened his eyes and had his Sharingan blazing. For a while he seemed to be doing well. Especially when he hit the grass nin with a Kaden, Ruka no Jutsu. However, the shinobi seemed to be fine as he walked out of the fire. Sure, the face was slightly melted, but that wasn't stopping him. The nin told Sasuke that his name was Orochimaru and if he wanted to see him again, he had to survive the exam. Sakura, who had climbed back, wanted to know why they'd ever want to see him again. Without saying anything, Orochimaru's head shot forward and he bit down on Sasuke's neck. Sasuke-kun will seek me, to seek power, Orochimaru said as he began to sink into the tree branch. Sasuke began to scream in pain as a strange mark appeared on his neck. All too soon, he passed out. Sakura went over to grab Sasuke and began to run. With one team member missing and the other down, they were sitting ducks. Naruto, where are you? She thought desperately to herself. Konoha. Training Ground 44. Chunin exam, second test. A few minutes earlier, Naruto groaned slightly as he slowly opened his eyes, having regained consciousness. Looking through bleary eyes and orange-tinted shades, Naruto was able to figure that he was on the ground and upside down. Sasuke. Sakura. He called out as he righted himself up. At this point, he noticed that a large shadow had fallen over him. He turned his gaze to the source of the shadow and his eyes widened at the sight of a large snake. A very large snake that was casting a shadow over him. Oh, crap, Naruto thought to himself as he jumped out of the way when the snake tried to strike. He had seen several of Anko's snakes and this one didn't look anything like any of them. Is this snake native to the forest? He thought to himself, never taking notice of its tail, until it was too late. Naruto grunted in defiance as the tail wrapped around him harder. His arms were pinned to his side, so the immortals were useless. Naruto's eyes widened as the mouth of the snake appeared before him and tossed him in, closing its mouth before he could get out, and swallowing him. Konoha. Just outside of Training Ground 44. Chunin exam, second test. Tokubetsu Jonin Anko was peacefully relaxing atop the chain-link fence of Training Ground 44 when one of the guards of the exam came and told her that they had found some bodies. As she looked at the bodies, she knew only one person who could and would want to melt the face off of someone. So, he's here. But why now? She thought to herself. Anko turned to one of the guards and said, "Get Anbu captains in the Forest of Death now." Anko then shunshined away, back to Training Ground 44 and jumped over the fence. Anko quickly summoned chakra to her legs as she ran. I may not be able to stop him, but I can at least slow him down. She thought to herself. Konoha. Inside giant snake's stomach. Well, isn't this just a bowl of miso ramen? Naruto thought to himself as he stabbed the lining of the snake's throat once more. No matter how many times he stabbed, he couldn't get a wound. Naruto then started to go through his options and an idea came to mind. Kage Bunshin. He yelled out. Soon the snake was filled with a horde of shadow clones. Unable to hold in so many bodies, the snake soon burst open, its head separating completely from its body. I plan to become Hokage. Naruto stated. You didn't think I'd let something like being eaten stop me? Naruto asked the dead snake as he dispelled his clones. Naruto walked up to the mouth of the snake and blinked a jar into his hand. Very carefully, he then began to force venom out of the fang and into the jar. Once the jar was nearly full, Naruto screwed the lid on and blinked it back to his storage dimension. Next, he blinked a large empty syringe and collected a full amount of blood from the snake. The venom and blood would prove useful in later studies. Naruto then took a deep breath through the nose and smelled himself in the process. Kami, do I reek? I need to find a river quickly to wish this off or I'm going to have ninjas tracking me by my scent. Naruto thought to himself. After a few minutes of running through trees, Naruto came across a deep, peaceful flowing, babbling stream. He carefully took off his clothes and ran them through the water to deaden the scent. Well, since I'm here I may as well enjoy it. Besides, no one's around to see me. Naruto reasoned. He then took off his boxers, hid his clothes under a bush, and jumped into the stream. Konoha. Training Ground 44. Chunin exam, second test. Suna team. Temari, the dirty blonde-haired, busty, first child of the Yondaime Kazekage, sighed to herself. Gaara, I need to be alone for a while. She told her younger, red-haired, demon-holding brother. Gaara slowly turned to face her. Why? He asked in a low gravely tone. Well gee, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm covered in blood from your little hobby. She thought to herself, wanting to say it aloud. However, she simply replied saying, it's a woman thing, Gaara. But how about this? If I'm not back in 2.5 hours, you can kill Kankuro. What? Her black jumpsuit wearing, younger brother cried out. See you guys in a couple of hours. Temari called over her shoulder as she bounded away. After a few minutes of running, she found a perfect stream to use. Unfortunately, someone else was using it. Who the hell is that? She asked herself. Temari couldn't recall seeing a genin with such blonde hair and whisker-like marks on his face. Well, whoever he is, he's cute. He looks slightly younger than me, but with my dating life, I'd take him. She thought to herself. Thanks to being the Cage's daughter, Gaara's sister, and the strongest genin kunoichi in Suna, guys tended to fear her and stayed away from her. So, Temari had a lot of sexual frustration built up. Very carefully, Temari set her fan to the side and opened her battle kimono, just enough to expose her large chest and stomach. She moved her left hand up under her fishnet shirt and began to softly knead her S. She could feel her panties getting wetter and wetter with each passing moment. Temari moved her right hand under the bottom half of her battle kimono and pushed it to the side as she slid her middle finger into her slit. As she began to rub her G-spot, she started to pinch her small, dark brown nipples. After a few moments of intense rubbing and abusing her S, Temari came shooting out her love juice. She forced her jaw to stay close to prevent herself from yelling out in pleasure. She saw that the blonde-haired boy was still there, however a sudden rustle from some nearby bushes grabbed their attention. The boy had apparently decided not to hang around, as he was then gone in a flash. Temari however had decided to stay for a moment and saw a brown rabbit emerge from the bushes. Well, I guess the stream is free now, she thought to herself, while lightly chuckling. With that, she stood up, grabbed her fan and jumped toward the stream. After all, no one was around. Meanwhile, Karui, a dark brown-skinned genin kunoichi from Kumo with long red hair and a busty chest, was running through the trees trying to find a genin team for her own team to challenge for their scroll. She stopped suddenly as she heard what she thought was splashing. Quickly running towards the noise, she soon stopped as she saw that there was someone in the stream. Who the hell is that? She mentally asked herself. The only one that she had seen with blonde hair had been some Konoha fangirl kunoichi. Well, he looks good. It'd be nice to have him as a boyfriend, if he has a good personality. Karui thought slightly lecherously to herself, as she watched a few droplets of water fall off of his golden blonde hair, landing on his strong chest and flowing down his chiseled abs, before coming into contact with the stream. Karui noticed that she was drooling at the sight and quickly wiped the excessive saliva away. Seeing that no one was around, she took off her sword and lifted up her dark red tank top shirt. She began to roughly knead her large S, while every once in a while dragging a fingernail over the areolae of her black nipples. All too soon, she had removed her black skirt and let it fall onto the branch. She had squatted down and thrusted her middle and ring finger into her flowing wet. Within minutes she let out a silent scream of pleasure as she came, squirting as she did so. Karui noticed that the boy was still in the stream, but suddenly the sound of a bush rustling from up the bank of the stream had grabbed their attention. The mysterious genin had apparently decided to run for it, as he was gone in a poof of smoke. She then saw that a rabbit had hopped out from the rusting bushes. She looked down at herself and decided to use the stream to clean herself, before meeting up with her team. She stood up, grabbed her skirt and sword and jumped towards the river. Karui didn't bother to cover herself since no one was around. A mile or so away, Sakura had just finished putting the last touch on a series of traps surrounding her and an unconscious Sasuke when she heard a loud scream. What the hell is up with this forest? She thought to herself, as she grabbed a kunai. Temari and Karui both covered themselves as best they could. What the hell do you think you're doing? They yelled at each other in perfect unison. Both of them then got bright blushes on their faces. I take it you were watching that guy? Temari asked the older girl. Yeah, I was. It seems you were too. Karui replied. Temari nodded her head. She then took a closer look at the girl and said, "You're that Kumo kunoichi from the other day." Temari thought back to a few days before when she had first met the girl and then that strange encounter with that doctor guy. Granted, his advice did help. She wound up with the second largest chest, having been unable to beat that pale blonde-haired kunoichi also from Kumo. Oh yeah, you're her. Temari, right, yes. I believe you were called Karui. Yeah, so, What do we do about this now, Temari? Karui asked the Suna Kunoichi. Well, I came here to clean off some blood stains, while my team continues on to the tower with our scrolls. I'm guessing you don't have your team's scroll with you. No, I don't. I was sent out to look for a team to challenge for their scroll. After seeing that guy, I decided to relieve some stress. Upon seeing myself after my moment of pleasure, Karui explained with a smile. I thought it would be best if I cleaned up. Since you don't have a scroll, it would be pointless to fight you. Karui replied. She then thought for a moment before saying, I guess we call a truce. Okay. Temari replied. The two kunoichi then began to bathe in the stream. As they bathed, they got to know one another and found that they weren't so different from one another. When they had finished, the two girls had formed a small bond of friendship. See you around, Karui. Temari said before bounding off to the tower to meet her team. Same to you, Temari, Karui replied, heading towards her team's camp. A few minutes later, Karui landed in her team's campsite to find both Samui and Omoi knocked unconscious. She looked to see that Omoi had their scroll opened on his lap. That idiot, I knew it was a bad idea to give him the scroll. He never. Before she could finish her mental rant, Karui was knocked out from behind. Several hours later, night had finally fallen and Naruto was pissed. Where the hell are all of these guys coming from? Naruto mentally asked himself. Ever since running from that stream and hurriedly putting his clothes back on, teams seemed to be appearing from everywhere. So far, 5 teams had fought him and he had beaten all 5. 2 of the teams he killed, 2 he was able to knock unconscious, and 1 that he killed only 1 member before the others had surrendered. He was able to gain 3 Heaven Scrolls and 2 Earth Scrolls, among other things, from these encounters. The claws of the immortals had become caked in blood. Naruto's jacket as well as his pants had gotten blood spots on them, but he didn't stop to clean them. As he was bounding through the trees, Naruto heard some loud growling coming from below him. Looking down, he saw that 3 large tigers had cornered Anko. Something's wrong. Anko would never let herself get cornered. Why is she clutching at her neck? Naruto thought to himself. At that moment, the center tiger had tensed its muscles and then sprang forward to kill Anko. Naruto grabbed the tree branch and launched himself down at the tiger to intercept him. While falling, Naruto blinked Kubikiri into his hands and swung it down hard, driving it through the tiger's skull. Anko looked on in surprise. Damn, can't believe I had to be saved by the brat. She thought to herself. Are you alright, Anko-san? Naruto asked. Yeah, but I need to get to the tower. We have an emergency, she replied. At this time the other 2 tigers had gotten over seeing their partner killed by the small morsel in front of them and decided to strike at the blonde. However, both of them found that they were unable to move. Looks like Kanashibari no Jutsu was used. Anko thought to herself as both she and Naruto looked up into the trees to see 2 Anbu standing above them, one in a cat mask, the other in a bird mask. You know, for Anbu, you guys sure are slow. Naruto told them. Oh, don't say that, Naruto-kun. The bird-masked Anbu replied. What's the problem, Anko-san? Asked the cat-masked Anbu. Orochimaru is here at the exam. She replied. This caused both of the Anbu to tense. Naruto, however, didn't, as he didn't know who this Orochimaru person was. We have to get you to the Hokage Tower then. The bird-masked Anbu said. No, we need to go to the tower. Anko told them. She then turned to face Naruto and said, Naruto, find your team and get to the tower. Naruto nodded his head and took off. It was nearly daybreak and he prayed he could find them. He didn't know who this Orochimaru person was, but he sounded bad. Looks like I have some investigating to do. Naruto thought to himself. A few hours later, Naruto found his team. It turned out that they had been in a fight with a single mysterious grass nin and the Sound Trio. Luckily Rock Lee and Team 10 came to help. Sasuke had awoken with strange black markings on his left arm and the left side of his face. Soon after, Team 10 and Team Guy left, leaving Team 7 all to themselves. Sasuke, can you move? Naruto asked his teammate. No, I'm too tired to move. Sasuke replied from his sitting position on the floor. Then I'll carry you. Naruto replied. He then quickly made a clone and grabbed both Sasuke and Sakura. As he ran as fast as he could through the forest, Sakura kept screaming. A few hours later, they had arrived at the tower. The clone put Sakura down and walked over to the real Naruto to help Sasuke walk through the door. Naruto Baka, if you would have listened to me, you would have heard me tell you that we only have an earth scroll. We can't enter the tower yet. Sakura yelled at her teammate. Actually, we can. What are you talking about? Sakura asked him. Naruto reached behind himself and pulled out 5 bloody scrolls, 3 heaven and 2 earth. Naruto, why do they have blood on them? Sasuke asked. Well, some of the other teams really didn't want to give their scrolls up, so I had to convince them otherwise. Naruto replied. Flashback no jutsu. Yesterday afternoon, Naruto ran through the forest as fast as he could. Moments ago, he had heard a horrifying shriek come from the stream he had just left. This forest was getting more and more dangerous. As he bounded through the trees, Naruto was stopped suddenly as something whizzed by his face and made a hard thunk-like noise into the tree. While turning his head to face it, an odd hissing noise started. Naruto was greeted with the sight of a kunai with 3 exploding tags about to go off. Oh, crap, Naruto thought to himself as he jumped away. However, he didn't jump fast enough and was caught in the blast. The force of the explosion had sent him head first into another 3. Naruto smashed into it hard and tumbled down to the forest floor. Looks like, we got the little leaf nin. Naruto heard a voice above him say. He felt the sound of 3 pairs of feet landing. As he groggily got to his knees, Naruto saw that there were 3 tacky nins in front of him. All 3 of them were male. The one in the middle was short and bald. To his left, was a tall shinobi with long flowing blue hair. The final shinobi was average in size. He had tanned skin and short black hair. Who the hell are you guys? Naruto asked them. We are from the Hidden Waterfall Village and we're here to take your scroll. The bald shinobi replied. Yeah, well sorry, but I don't have the scroll. Naruto shot back. Then it's sorry for you, the shinobi with black hair said. If we kill you, it will at least stop your team from passing. With that the tacky nins jumped into action. The bald shinobi ran directly at Naruto, while his teammates jumped high into the air above and began to throw a volley of kunai and shuriken down at him. As Naruto tried to deflect most of the objects and dodge the rest, he was taken by surprise from the bald shinobi and was brutally hit in the stomach. Naruto was slammed hard into the tree and spat out a small amount of blood. Damn it, I don't have time for this. I need to finish this quickly. Naruto thought to himself. As he looked forward, he saw that the bald-headed shinobi had unsheathed a sword and was swinging it right at Naruto's neck. He quickly raised his left arm up and summoned chakra into the left immortal to form the shield. Naruto lifted up his right arm and summoned the blade for the right immortal. The ninja was unprepared and was taken by surprise as the blade went through his heart. The 2 waterfall nins looked on in shock as their teammates slumped over, dead. You'll pay for that, growled the tall blue-haired shinobi. The nin took in a deep breath of air and let out a scream. It wasn't an ordinary scream, as it had Naruto gripping his ears, trying to keep the sonic volume out. After a few moments, the pain to his ears stopped, but Naruto was struggling to stay on his feet as the sonic blast had caused him to become unbalanced. Before he could defend himself, the sonic torture started again. But this time, it was different. A few seconds into the pain and Naruto felt the sharpened steel of a kunai lodge itself in his throat. Suddenly, the sonic torture was over and Naruto's head slowly lowered down to the ground. Letting his eyes gaze at the sight before him, he saw the smirking face of the blue-haired shinobi, who had been putting him under the mind-numbing pain, and the smiling face of the tan ninja, whose arm was stretched out, indicating that he had been the one to throw the weapon. Naruto collapsed in a heap on the ground, as his blood began to slowly pool around him. "Pull the blade out, you weakling!" screamed the voice of Kyuubi from within him. "If I do, won't that just kill me faster?" Naruto asked in gasping thought. "Not if you use my chakra to heal yourself, idiot," the demon told him. So, as the two tacky nin laughed over an easy kill, neither of them noticed the slowly increasing feel of a bloodthirst presence, or saw Naruto slowly pull the knife out of his throat. As they began to walk away, the two shinobi began to feel the intense presence. A presence that they had felt back home in the hidden waterfall village, but shouldn't be feeling here. After all, she didn't come with them to the exams. A gargled ahem was heard behind them, the behind them where two dead nin should be. Slowly, they turned around to see the last of what should have been a fatal wound on the blonde leaf nin's neck heel. "Son of a bitch. He's just like the seven-tailed demon whore, back home," the blue-haired nin yelled out. This statement intrigued Naruto, but he only need one of them alive to tell him about this demon. Naruto ran as fast as he could at them, and just as the blue-haired shinobi was taking in a breath of air for more sonic torture, Naruto swung hard with the claws of his right-armed immortal, ripping out his throat effectively. The tanned nin stared on dumbly as his teammate's blood splashed onto his face. He was completely taken by surprise as Naruto slammed him hard into the ground. "Well, looks like it's just you and me. Now, tell me about this seven-tailed demon that you know of," Naruto told him as he stood on the shinobi's arms and sat down on his chest. All the while, the blade from the right immortal was pointing at his throat. "Why would I do that?" the nin asked. "Tell me, what assurances do you have that you'll make it out alive? Give me the information that I seek and I'll have a reason not to kill you," Naruto explained. Her name is Fu. She is the J Jinchuriki for the seven-tailed horn beetle, Nanabi," the nin replied in a quivering voice. "Thanks," Naruto replied, before shoving the blade into his throat. "Oh, I'm not killing you. The hole in your throat is. Now, time to search them for their scroll," Naruto thought to himself as he began to search among the bodies. After a few moments, he found their earth scroll with the blue-haired shinobi. I wonder, Naruto thought to himself as he tore open the guy's shirt and summoned chakra into his hand, concentrating as he did so. "I thought so. That sonic attack was a bloodline." Naruto began to focus and started to gather a small pool of the shinobi's DNA into his chakra bowl. Soon it was enough and Naruto blinked a syringe into his free hand. After filling the barrel of the syringe up, Naruto injected himself in his left calf muscle. Once the pain was over, he picked up the scroll, blinked the extra supplies to his dimension and began to go on his way. End flashback no jutsu. Sasuke arched an eyebrow at what Naruto was indicating to them, while Sakura just stared on in shock. This can't be the same Naruto Baka from the academy. He's supposed to an idiot. Sakura thought to herself. So, Naruto's grown strong enough to kill. Sasuke thought as Team 7 walked into the tower. After seeing the message on the wall, Sakura and Naruto opened the Earth and Heaven scrolls and were greeted by the sight of their old academy instructor, Iruka. He explained what the message meant and congratulated them on passing the second exam. Iruka told them that they had 3 days to relax and train before the second exam ended. They were informed that they were the third team to arrive. They went upstairs to the bunk rooms and were told that they had access to the medical station, the kitchen, the library, and the training grounds. Anything beyond that was off limits. They soon found their sensei, Kakashi, and explained what had happened in the Forest of Death. He told them he'd get Sasuke checked out and proceeded to take the young Uchiha to get looked at. Naruto headed to the kitchen to get something to eat, while Sakura began to wonder about her future as a kunoichi. After being the first team to the tower and spending a peaceful night sleeping, Temari found herself getting hungry and went to the kitchen to cook herself something. Now, Temari wasn't the best cook in the world, but she had taught herself enough to make a meal. So, A few minutes later she was sitting down with a nicely filled bowl of fried rice with egg. She always made a bit more than she intended, so Temari left the remainder on the countertop in a bowl with a note saying that anyone who wanted it could have it. After taking a few bites, the door opened to reveal a short-looking figure. By the way the person walked, Temari assumed it was a male. He was shorter than she was, wore black shoes, pants, and a large black trench coat with the hood covering his hair, as he also had his mouth wrapped in black bandages. Taking note of the orange kanji for 9 on the back of his coat, Temari realized that it was the genin that had gone to sleep in the first test and then when the 10th question was asked had challenged the examiner. It was hard to tell if he was an idiot or insane, or, much less likely, a genius of some kind. She watched as he went over the cabinets and took out a packet of instant ramen and began to heat up the water for it. As he waited, the shinobi took notice of her bowl and offer. He carefully picked up the bowl and summoned chakra into his hands. Analyzing it for poisons, smart, Temari thought to herself. He may be an idiot, but he had something going for him. As the water slowly began to heat, he began to eat the fried rice. When he had finished the fried rice, he poured the water into the bowl with the instant ramen. The hooded shinobi took his bowl and sat at the table in front of her, facing her. She began to slowly eat her food once again, trying to not let on that she was watching him. The shinobi quickly finished his ramen and put his bowl in the sink. As he opened the door, he turned his head slightly back to her and said, "Thank you for the fried rice, Suna-chan." He quickly shut the door and his footsteps were heard leaving. Temari had a slight blush on her face, before she quickly squished it. Who the hell does that guy think he is, saying that? She asked herself in an annoyed tone. Oh well, he seemed nice and so did that mysterious blonde from the stream. Unfortunately, with what was to come it would be highly unlikely that she'd ever see either of them again. Naruto went to send letters to Roshi, Han, and, now, Fu. A few hours later, Kakashi returned to speak with Naruto and Sakura, telling them that Sasuke would be asleep until tomorrow due to the injuries he had and was sleeping them off. Over the next 3 days, 4 more teams arrived. The time for the second exam was soon over and the genin were informed that they would be having preliminary matches for the third test, as there were too many genin. As the Hokage was speaking to the genin, Sasuke was silently looking around at the competition. So, he's here. I'll get to see what he's capable of. He thought to himself as he stared at the red-headed shinobi from Suna. Sasuke hoped to have a chance to fight him, but not yet. He had been told by Kakashi, a few days ago, that due to the nature of the Fujihoin it would be 4 days until he could start using chakra correctly. Today was his 3rd day, so whoever he faced in his preliminary match, he wouldn't be able to use ninjutsu against them. Soon the Hokage's speech was done and a series of names began to flash on the large screen above. A second later, Sasuke smirked slightly as he read his own name on the screen. Well, at least I'll get to finish early. Sasuke thought to himself as he walked forward to face his opponent, Yoroi Akato, a member of Kabuto's team. As the genin, jonin and examiners made their way to the upper level, Temari looked around and saw that Karui was nowhere to be seen. I guess her team didn't make it. The Suna Kunoichi thought to herself. The match between Sasuke and Yoroi hadn't been anything overly great, but when he used Chakra Kyuan on Sasuke it began to look like Sasuke was going to lose. However, Sasuke was able to get away and use his new taijutsu move, Shishi Renden, and secure a win. Unfortunately, he passed out due to nearly having all of his chakra absorbed. Sasuke was taken away to the medical ward by the Med Nin team. That is odd. Sasuke should have just used one of his fire jutsu to roast that guy. Something's going on with my team that I'm not being told about. Well, I don't have a right to judge. It's not like I've been honest with them. Naruto thought to himself as Ashino fought against Zaku, from Oto. Naruto looked down to see that Shino had won, since Zaku's arms exploded. Naruto was impressed. He hadn't expected the quiet Aburame to be so ruthless. It's always the quiet ones, he thought with a small grin. The next match was between Kankuro from Suna and Masumi Tsurugi. At first, the match seemed to be a rather boring taijutsu match, until Masumi literally wrapped his limbs around Kankuro, squeezing hard on the Suna shinobi's neck. Naruto was surprised that he was a little squeamish at the sight. Soon, the sound of breaking bones was heard, indicating that the Suna nin's neck was broken. Before Masumi was declared the winner, Kankuro's head spun around and wooden arms emerged from his body. The mummified package that Kankuro had placed on the ground unraveled itself to reveal the real Kankuro and the one gripping Masumi as a puppet. Kankuro tightened the arms around his puppet until Masumi's spine broke, earning him the win for the round. The fourth match was between Sakura and Ino Yamanaka. For the first minute the two-leaf kunoichi talked back and forth, which slightly got under Naruto's nerves. But it gave him more time to prepare for his own match. Eventually, the girls tied their forehead protectors onto their foreheads and began to fight. For a while it was a taijutsu and insult-throwing match. Though, with Lee's crush on Sakura, it was like poetry to him. Eventually, Sakura insulted Ino about only caring about her perfect hair. This, in turn, caused Ino to snap and cut off her hair. She threw the cut strands at Sakura, declaring that she didn't need them and that she was going to force Sakura to give up. After having pretended to use her family's Shintention no Jutsu, but in reality trapping Sakura with chakra flowing through the cut strands of her hair, Ino used Shintention for real and took over Sakura's body. Ino made Sakura raise her hand and started to announce Sakura's forfeit. Naruto sighed to himself as he unclasped the immortals, setting them down. He cupped his hands over his wrapped mouth and shouted out, "Sakura, you've come this far. Don't let yourself lose to that Sasuke-loving idiot. If you lose, you will never be acknowledged by him," effectively cutting off Ino's controlled surrender of Sakura. Sakura's body began to shake and fell to the ground as she regained control from Ino. Naruto was quietly impressed. Throwing a Yamanaka out of one's mind was no easy task. With one last hurl of strength, the two-leaf kunoichi charged each other. They slammed their fists as hard as they could on the other's face, resulting in a double knockout. Kakashi and Asuma shunshine down to the lower level and took their students to the upper level. After checking on them, they saw that they were fine. The two kunoichi then woke up and were told that due to a double knockout, there would be no winner for the fourth match. The fifth match was between Ten, the kunoichi from Team Guy, and Temari, the Suna kunoichi. Naruto looked down at the two kunoichi as they stared each other down, as he, Sakura, and Ino tried to protect their ears from excited cheers of Lee and Guy. "Hopefully, this match will be better than the last one," Naruto said as Ten jumped into the air. "What's that supposed to mean, Naruto Baka?" Sakura asked with a glare at him. "It means, Sakura-chan, that after having done something that only a handful of other shinobi have done, you tied in your match. You threw a Yamanaka out of your mind, but at the end you tied. You should have had something up your sleeve." Naruto simply told her. "Like you could do any better, Naruto," Ino said, defending her friend. "Actually, I could and will. Unlike someone on my team, I haven't been gushing for the past 4 months. You've been doing the same training as Sasuke and I," Sakura said, starting to get really pissed at her blonde teammate. "I've been doing the same training that you know of," Naruto corrected. "I happen to also train by myself. Besides, do you really think that Sasuke stops training when he gets home? My specialty is Kage Bunshin, and one of the effects of Kage Bunshin is that whatever my clones learn, I learn when they are dispelled. So," Naruto concluded, "in the 5 months since we graduated from the academy, I've done 25 months worth of training. You, Sakura, on the other hand, have just been messing around, making yourself a liability. That is something that I'll be putting a stop to." Naruto finished. This had Kakashi and the other eavesdropping Jonin raising their eyebrows in curiosity, wondering what the academy dead last could hope to do. All the while, Ibiki smirked to himself. Kamedachi no jutsu. Temari cried out, sending a vortex of razor-sharp gale winds at 1010. The genin weapon mistress was lifted up into the air as hundreds of invisible blades began to cut into her. See, you should be more like her, Naruto said to Sakura. She's strong, ruthless and good-looking all at the same time. Everyone watched as 1010 fell, landing harshly on her back on Temari's iron fan. Naruto gave a soft sigh and said, "That is just beautiful." Everyone looked sideways at the hooded blonde and sweat dropped. They could see the hearts in his eyes and they were orange. Why do all of my students have to be so weird? Kakashi thought to himself. Temari threw 1010 off of her fan, where the girl flew until she was caught by her teammate, Lee. Nice catch. Temari said to Lee. What is your problem? Is this how you treat someone who did their best? Lee shouted out at the girl. Oh, shut up and take that garbage out of here. Temari replied. Lee began to charge the Sunakunoichi and jumped into the air. Konoha Senpu, Lee cried out. Damn it. Naruto thought to himself as he jumped into the battle arena. As Lee spun around to present Temari's face with the back of his heel, his leg was stopped as it met with Naruto's hand. Everyone stared wide-eyed at Naruto's speed. He has grown so much in the last few months. Ibiki thought to himself, watching the happenings. Lee-kun, take your teammate and go. If you continue with this, you could be disqualified. Naruto told his friend. Very well, Naruto-kun. Lee replied. He let his leg down and went to hand 1010 over to the med nins. Naruto stared at Temari for a moment, before jumping back up to the upper level. Soon, everyone quieted down about what they saw, while they were clearing away 1010's weapons, and the sixth match was announced between Nara Shikamaru and Tsuchi Kin. The match was relatively a simple match. Shikamaru waited for his opponent to start monologuing about her attacks and then hit her with his Kajimane no Jutsu, forcing her movements to match his. Shikamaru pulled out a shuriken, while forcing Kin to do the same and made them both throw it. Just as the shuriken was about to hit, Shikamaru just let his body fall back into a handstand. Kin wasn't so lucky. Since she didn't pay attention to where she was, she hit the wall behind her and knocked herself out. Impressive. He was able to win because his opponent forgot one of the most basic rules. Naruto thought to himself, smirking at his lazy friend's genius. However, his smirking was cut short as he looked at what was on the announcement screen, Inuzuka Kiba vs. Uzumaki Naruto. Finally, it's about time. Naruto shouted out in joy of getting his chance to fight. We can definitely beat him, Akamaru. Kiba told his nin dog, who happily barked, agreeing with him. Naruto calmly walked to the stairs to get to his match, whereas Kiba just jumped over the railing and into the arena. Naruto, do you want your gauntlets? Sakura asked her teammate. Nah, leave them there. Naruto replied as he descended down the stairs. So, Naruto Uzumaki is his name. Temari thought to herself, as she peered over the railing to see what the mysterious hooded nin now known as Naruto would do. There's no way Kiba will lose to Naruto Baka. Ino thought, cheering for Kiba. Well, time to see how much you've changed, Naruto. Shikamaru thought as he eagerly waited to see the troublesome changes in Naruto. I want to cheer for Naruto-kun, but I'm on Kiba-kun's team and he might get mad. Hinata thought depressingly to herself. The seventh match is Inuzuka Kiba vs. Uzumaki Naruto. Called out Gekko Hayate. Not even trying to stop himself, Kiba laughed while saying, it's like we've already won. How lucky can you get, Akamaru? Akamaru barked happily from inside Kiba's coat. Oh, shut the hell up. Naruto shot back, before continuing, and don't bring a puppy into this fight, either. It's just in they way. You Baka, Akamaru is fighting with me. The Inuzuka clan fights using nin dogs. They're our tools, just like a kunai or a shuriken. Animals and bugs are seen as weapons. Kiba replied, as he put Akamaru down on the ground. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and replied, Fine, you'll need all the help you can get to beat me. Ha, acting all tough. Akamaru, you stay out of it. I'll fight alone, Kiba said as he gently pushed Akamaru back. On the upper level, Kurenai looked over to Kakashi and said, "So this is your last student, Naruto, Well, sorry Kakashi, but there's no way he'll beat Kiba." Sakura just glared a little at Kurenai. A teammate was a teammate, as Kakashi replied, "We'll see about that. I really feel sorry for you, Naruto, so I'll finish this with one punch." Kiba said to Naruto, "Is that so? Then I'll give you the first punch for free." Naruto shot back, "Quit acting so tough, dead last." Kiba replied, thinking back to his time at the academy with Naruto and how the blonde had been the worst student at the academy. Seeing that the boys were done trading insults, Gecko yelled out saying, "Begin the match." He then jumped back to a safe distance. "Gijyu Ninpu, Shikyaku no Jutsu." Kiba called out, getting on all fours. He was now much faster than if he was on two legs. With his chakra flaring blue around him, Kiba decided to take Naruto up on his cocky offer. "Here I come," he said, right before charging at Naruto. Everyone watched as Kiba covered the distance between him and Naruto in the blink of an eye. Kiba had buried his right elbow deep into Naruto's gut. Naruto flew back a few feet before landing and skidded a few more, before finally stopping a few feet from the wall. On the upper level, everyone was having different reactions to what had happened before them. "See, Kakashi," Kurenai said to the legendary Scarecrow. "That guy is weak," Kankuro said between his older sister and younger brother. "That's it," Temari thought to herself, disappointedly. She was expecting to be impressed by this Naruto. Not youthful, Naruto-kun. Lee thought as he looked down at his friend's fight. He then felt a hand on his shoulder and looked to see his sensei behind him. "Have faith, Lee. Sometimes the power of youth takes a moment to awaken in our comrades, but you must never doubt your friends," Guy told his pupil. "Hi, Guy-sensei," Lee replied with renewed vigor. There was no way Naruto Baka could have ever beaten Kiba-kun. Ino said from between her teammates. "Don't tell me that's it, brat," Anko thought to herself as she looked at Ibiki's apprentice. "Interesting start, doctor. Now, how are you going to finish it?" Ibiki thought as he gazed down at his student. Sakura looked back at her sensei. She saw Kakashi give her his patented upside-down smile and give her a thumbs up. "All right Naruto, show everyone what Team 7 is all about," Sakura thought as she smirked softly to herself. Naruto wouldn't let himself be beaten by Kiba. Back in the arena, Kiba was walking back to Akamaru when he turned to the examiner and said, "He won't be waking up anytime soon, Examiner-san. Go ahead and call it." Kiba's smirking and congratulating of himself was cut short, as he heard the gasps of every above him. He then heard what could only be described as a blink behind him, followed by the opening of a bottle, and finished off by an extremely annoying slurp of someone drinking something. Kiba turned around to see Naruto standing and drinking a bottle of water. Ibiki mentally smirked as several others cheered. "Kiba, not that I'm not flattered by that, love tap, but you just aren't my type. You might have better luck with Sasuke, though. Anyway, was that it?" Naruto asked the dog user Ninja. "What do you mean, better luck with Sasuke?" Kiba asked, trying to understand what Naruto was saying. "You know, better luck with getting a date, since he's gay." "I mean come on, haven't you seen the way he's been staring at the guys in here? Especially that red-headed guy, from Suna." Naruto replied. This statement caused several of the guys on the upper level to shiver and one red-haired Suna nin to wonder what gay meant. Ibiki silently shook with laughter at what Naruto was implying. Sakura and Ino both glared at Naruto for saying that their Sasuke-kun was gay. "You baka, I'm not gay," Kiba shouted back. "Hey, I told you I was sorry. Look, Kiba, I would have been more accepting of your affection, if you were a hot girl, like your cousin. Well, you better use Akamaru, if that's as good as you've got." Naruto said as he screwed the cap back onto the water bottle and blinked it away. Several people were wondering how Naruto called the bottle of water to him when he didn't even summon it. After all, there were no hand seals or anything of the sort. Getting pissed, Kiba said, "Come on, Akamaru." Akamaru barked behind his master as they charged Naruto together. As they ran towards Naruto, Kiba threw a few smoke bombs at Naruto. The bombs detonated on impact and soon Naruto was surrounded by thick dark purple smoke. Shit. I can't see anything through this smoke and I've yet to master silent killing, so hearing is out too. Naruto thought to himself right before he was hit in the side. From every direction Naruto kept getting hit, the side, the front, the back, and the top. I've got to get out of this smoke. Naruto thought and ran to the side. As he was emerging from the smoke, Naruto saw Akamaru flying at him and tackle him back into the smoke. Naruto yelled out as he dealt with Akamaru. Kiba had jumped out of the smoke when he heard Naruto's yell. Alright, he fell for it. Kiba said as the smoke began to dissipate and revealed a happy Akamaru with Naruto laid out on the floor. Good work, Akamaru. The small white puppy began to run towards Kiba, playfully barking as he did so. It wasn't until Akamaru had bounded towards his arms that Kiba thought something was wrong. The small white puppy had a look of anger on his face as he opened his jaw wide and sunk his sharp teeth deep into Kiba's wrist. Everyone was shocked, seeing Akamaru bite Kiba. Akamaru had been Kiba's constant companion. Something wasn't right. You idiot, you fell for it, came the voice of Naruto from Akamaru. With a poof of smoke, Naruto appeared where Akamaru had been. Naruto let go and jumped back. He opened his bandages a little more to spit, before closing them. You even taste like a dog. Naruto yelled out. Where's Akamaru? Kiba demanded. Over here. Kiba looked behind Naruto to see a second Naruto holding Akamaru by the back of the nin dog's neck. Several on the shinobi on the upper level were amazed at what Naruto had done. Ino looked down at the only other blonde ninja outside of her family, with shock. No way, that's Naruto. He's on even ground with Naruto. In fact, he might be better than him, she said with surprise filling her voice. Naruto was never crafty enough to use something like the Kage Bunshin or Henge together, before. Shikamaru said to his two teammates. He's good at using his techniques at the right time. Temari said to her younger brothers, silently impressed at Naruto's use of skill. She would have just blown the smoke away, not even bothering to trap the dog. I guess he isn't that weak. Kankuro replied, offhandedly. Gaara, however, chose to remain silent. Looks like you've gotten stronger, but it's over. I'm going to get serious now. Kiba said to Naruto. Naruto just silently arched a hidden eyebrow at this. He's grown even more in the exam. Kakashi, the third, and Ibiki all thought simultaneously. Is that really Naruto, the all-time failure? Kurenai thought to herself, surprised that Kiba was unable to take Naruto down, yet. I guess he's no longer the Naruto that we knew. Shikamaru said to Choji and Ino, who both nodded in agreement. What exactly did you do, Kakashi? Asuma thought to himself. The growth of our Kiba and Akamaru might be greater than Naruto's. Kurenai thought as she watched her student reach into his nin pouch. Naruto, you're going to give me back Akamaru. Kiba said, just before he flicked a small brown-looking marble into Akamaru's mouth. Naruto didn't know what Kiba was doing, so he was surprised to see Akamaru's fur start to turn a burnt red color. The nin dog's body grew slightly bigger and his fur became more feral-looking. With a loud growl, Akamaru swung back and dispelled Naruto's clone. What the hell did you give that dog? Naruto asked as Kiba also consumed one of the odd pills. Food pills? Kakashi thought to himself, wondering what the Inuzuka boy was planning on doing with his student. Looks like Kiba is planning to end this now. Kurenai thought with a smile to herself. Let's go, Akamaru. Kiba yelled out as he crouched low to the ground. Akamaru jumped on his back giving to confirmed barks. Gijyu Ninpu, Jiyujin Bunshin. Kiba yelled out. A puff of smoke then covered the dog user and his dog, but when the smoke cleared, Akamaru was replaced with another Kiba. Both were very feral looking, especially the bottom one, the real Kiba, with his blue chakra surrounding him. This doesn't look good for me, Naruto thought, as he looked at the angry expression on the face of both Kibas. What did he eat? Shikamaru asked, not knowing what the Inuzuka boy had done. He ate a food pill. Choji replied to his best friend. What's a food pill? Asked Ino, having never heard of such an item. It's a special medicine that allows the shinobi that uses it to fight for 3 days and 3 nights straight. It's high in protein and is quickly absorbed into the body. It also has substances that act as both a stimulus and a tranquilizer. Choji informed his teammates, as his family made food pills. Shikamaru and Ino both looked surprised by the information as they turned back to the fight. Kiba and Akamaru's chakra have most likely doubled, even if it's temporary. Choji added. Time to end this. Let's go. Kiba yelled out. The two Kibas jumped forward at Naruto with amazing speed. Shit. Naruto thought as he jumped back to prevent from being smashed. As the dust settled, the Kiba on his left ran forward, slashing at him. Naruto was able to dodge, but given the new speed of his opponent, he was only able to concentrate on one at a time. So, he never noticed the other Kiba running along the wall and lunge at him, until he turned around. Naruto dove to the side, to avoid being hit. Naruto! Sakura yelled out for her teammate. Naruto is in a bad situation. Asuma commented from behind his students. The members of Team 10 looked back at their sensei waiting for him to elaborate. Kiba has chakra surrounding his body and he is a total combat type fighter that brawls like a beast. A food pill that doubles his chakra is perfect for him. Back in the arena, Naruto was still only dodging Kiba's well-timed attacks with Akamaru. Shit. When I dodge one of them, the other is there with an attack. They're the perfect tag team. Naruto thought as he jumped back from the latest attack from one of them. With having to dodge and move so much, Naruto didn't know which one was Kiba and which one was Akamaru. As the two slashed their clawed hands at him, Naruto jumped high and far into the air. Unfortunately, he was too slow. I see a vulnerable spot. One of them yelled out. The two Kibas charged forward to where Naruto was going to land. Take this, Yatsuga. Kiba yelled out. Both his and Akamaru's bodies spun around at high speed, looking like two living drills snaking their way to Naruto. Naruto looked back just in time to see the attack bearing down on him. Unable to dodge, he took the attack full force. Over and over again, sharp claws starched at him with great force, ripping at parts of his coat and shattering his shades. He was then tossed into the air and landed hard with a thud, nearly at the entrance of the arena, by the stairs to the upper level. He could feel the blood coming out of his mouth slipping between the black wrappings. Everyone looked on in surprise at the force from which Naruto hit. That's the difference in our skill, Kiba said tauntingly as he stood. Slowly, Naruto's fingers curled inward. I'm going to be a Hokage, I can't lose here. Naruto groaned out, he face planted into the ground, as he focused on his dream to get his through the pain. You, Hokage, when you're weaker than me? Kiba asked. He then began to laugh as said, I'll become Hokage for you. As Kiba continued to laugh at him, Naruto slowly began to recall all of the laughter he had gotten from the other academy students, due to his mistakes. How people would look down on him, as if he was nothing more than a speck of dirt in the road. Not ever worth acknowledging. But yet, he had done it. He was able to pass the Genin exam, learn an A-rank jutsu in a single night, become a member of Konoha's torture and interrogation Anbu unit, beat Haku, start his own businesses, and befriend two Iwanin. No more holding back. You know inside that you can't become Hokage, so stop acting tough and give it up dead last. Kiba said as he continued to laugh even more. Yup. Naruto had decided to crush Kiba. The dog user had not only insulted him, but his dream. It was time to turn dog boy into dog bitch. On the upper level, Hinata's heart broke for her longtime crush. She knew he wasn't weak. Hinata had seen Naruto's strength when no one else had, but now everyone was watching. As the Jonin and the examiners watched the taunting, they each took note of one particular detail. It was getting colder in the room, a room that didn't have AC. Slowly, Naruto began to stand, much to Kiba's dislike. As he stood, Naruto began to unclasp the silver buckles of his trench coat. Carefully, he took his coat off as he didn't want to damage it any more than it already had been. Everyone stared at the rock-hard chest, chiseled abs, and muscle-toned arms of the young blonde shinobi. Several of the females present were blush as they gazed at his sun-kissed torso. That's what Naruto looks like under his coat, thought Sakura, surprised at her teammate's physique. Damn, it's him, Temari thought to herself as she recalled the blonde shinobi she had watched while she pleasured herself. Even though it wasn't intentional, she could feel a heat growing between her legs. That's hot, Ino thought dumbly to herself. Hinata was blushing as bright as a tomato at seeing Naruto exposed flesh, while in the back of her mind a small voice yelled out, "Yeah, take it off for mama you naughty boy." Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, and Guy however, were all staring at an interesting tattoo on Naruto's right shoulder. Naruto threw his jacket up on the upper level, all the while never raising his head. Kiba began to growl slightly at Naruto's actions, he was getting sick of the dead last not staying in his place. "If you compete with me over the title of Hokage," Naruto said, with barely restrained anger, "I'm going to crush you." He finished as he raised his head. Kiba and everyone in the room stared at Naruto's eyes. The sky blue orbs formed earlier were gone and were replaced with the ice-cold spheres before them. His eyes were almost glowing with a radiant of coldness. If only looks could kill. Though he would never admit it, Kiba knew he struck a nerve and that was going to cost him. "Geez, you sure are an annoying guy," Kiba complained, trying to ignore the foreboding atmosphere. "Fine. I'll make sure you never stand up again," Kiba yelled out, trying to get his confidence back up. Gatsuga. Both Kiba and Akamaru charged the blonde shinobi. As their bodies spun towards Naruto, the other Leaf Genin looked at Naruto, waiting for him to move. However, all he did was cross his arms over each other and brace himself. Everyone waited with bated breath as they saw Naruto gather chakra into his arms. Just as the two swirling vortexes of Kiba and Akamaru were about to hit him, Naruto spoke. "Chakra Nami." He swung his arms forward, blue chakra coming forth from both hands in an arch and hitting Kiba and Akamaru. They both went to different sides of the arena, both of them having been knocked out of their Gatsuga attack. Kurenai and her students looked down at what had happened with shock written on their faces. Kurenai herself couldn't believe what she had seen. It should have been impossible for the academy failure to knock Kiba or Akamaru out of Gatsuga, knocking both of them out was insane. Sure, she could do it, but she was a Jonin. This isn't good, Shino thought to himself. He had been listening to his bugs and if they were correct, Kiba should have surrendered. It wasn't going to end well. Kiba and Akamaru spun around, both looking at the ninja that smacked the away. Getting more and more angered by the moment, Kiba ran forward and threw 3 smoke bombs at Naruto. In seconds, the smoke blanketed Naruto from view. Kiba and Akamaru began to spin once again and with a yell of "Gatsuga" from Kiba, the two attacked the smoke, hoping to hit Naruto. Everyone watched as for the next minute Kiba and Akamaru shredded the smoke. Soon the attack of Gatsuga stopped and the smoke began to clear. Slowly, they were able to make out 3 figures in the smoke. Once it was clear enough, everyone was shocked to see not 2, but 3 Kibas standing in the arena. So, that's his plan. Interesting, Kakashi thought to himself. The 3 Kibas stared at each other for a moment. I may not have recognized it last time, as I wasn't focusing. But this time, it's a different story, Naruto, Kiba said, right before he swung his fist into the left cheek of the Kiba to his left. The force of the blow caused the Kiba to fly back. Your scent betrayed you, Naruto. You shouldn't underestimate the noses of the Inuzuka clan. Good plan, but Kiba is able to focus his chakra into his nose and increase his sense of smelling by 1,000-fold. With that, he's easily able to tell people apart by just smell. Kurenai was thinking to herself as the Kiba, that was punched, disappeared in a poof of smoke. However, instead of seeing a downed Naruto, everyone saw the unconscious form of Akamaru. Akamaru! Kiba exclaimed in great surprise at seeing his downed partner instead of seeing his downed opponent. The members of Team 8 were all surprised at what happened. Kiba's nose shouldn't have failed him. Then it's you. Take this. Kiba yelled out as he spun around and slammed his fist hard into the remaining Kiba's face. The Kiba flew back and bounced a couple of times on the stone floor before he started the skid. During the skid, the henge was dropped and coming out of the smoke wasn't Naruto, but a second Akamaru. Oh crap, Kurenai thought, as she realized what had happened. Kiba heard the releasing of a henge from behind him. As he turned around, Kiba saw Naruto bearing down on him and was unprepared for the force behind Naruto's punch. The young Inuzuka boy was sent hurling backwards. Was Naruto ever this clever back at the academy? Ino asked her teammates in the upper level. Kiba landed next to Akamaru and gazed down at his partner. Akamaru turned his head slowly to Kiba and gave a soft pleading whine. Akamaru, are you alright? Kiba asked as he moved his right hand toward Akamaru. In response, Akamaru shot forward and bit down on Kiba's hand, hard. What the? Kiba thought to himself, right before the voice of Naruto came from Akamaru. Dude, how stupid can you be to have fallen for this again? Naruto Akamaru asked. What is it now? 3 times. Kiba threw the fake off of his hand and watched as Naruto dropped the henge. He stared at the 2 Narutos standing in front of him. See you around, Kiba. The Naruto on the right said as the left one waved his hand. The next moment, both of the Narutos were gone. Both of them were clones. Temari thought to herself. Over the course of the match, it had been interesting to watch this Naruto guy fight, but she was wondering what it was all leading up to. Where's Naruto? The Jonin thought to themselves. Inuzuka-san, I don't think you're taking this fight seriously. Came Naruto's voice from behind him. Kiba spun around, as everyone turned to see Naruto holding a bound Akamaru. Akamaru had his hind legs tied together and his jaw closed shut with ninja wire. Naruto was holding the dog up by the neck, with his right hand. I think it's time to properly motivate you, Naruto said. He then flicked his hand and the resounding snap of breaking bones filled the room. All of the Leaf Genin and their sensei stared at what had happened in open horror. Naruto had just killed Akamaru. This has gone too far. Kakashi thought to himself. Sakura couldn't believe what she was seeing. To hear about it was one thing, but to actually see someone kill in front of you was something completely different. There would be no awakening for the nin dog. You seem angry, Kiba. Naruto pointed out to his shocked opponent. Why are you angry? Sure, I broke your tool, but that's no reason to be angry. Naruto asked his opponent. Why am I angry? Kiba asked, shaking. You just killed my friend, you bastard. Kiba yelled back as he started to foam at the mouth. I didn't kill your friend, Kiba. Naruto replied, a darkly aloof look on his face. You said so yourself. He then began to focus chakra into his left hand and soon a small golden sphere appeared in his hand. Naruto summoned chakra into the sphere and then out of the sphere. Everyone watched with incredible amazement at what they were seeing before them. Somehow, a holographic screen had appeared before everyone in the middle of the arena. On the screen the image of Naruto and Kiba appeared, just as they were before their fight. The Inuzuka clan fights using nin dogs. Kiba's image said, they're our tools, just like a kunai or a shuriken. Silence filled the room as the recording continued. Animals and bugs are seen as weapons. After a few replays, the image stopped and the screen metallized back into the sphere from which it came. Understand now. Naruto asked Kiba as the horror showed on the Inuzuka's face. If Akamaru was your friend, why didn't you save him, Kiba? You let him die. Naruto asked as he pocketed the sphere. In the upper level, Ibiki saw what his apprentice was doing. You're playing a dangerous game there, Naruto. He thought to himself. Doing psychological torture on an Inuzuka by killing their nin dog is not a good idea. It was because of the bond between the Inuzuka clan members and their nin dogs that none of them were able to join the Anbu torture and interrogation unit. Although, there were several in the basic Anbu unit and even more in the Anbu Hunter Nin unit. Kiba was trembling in anger. Anger at himself, at Naruto, and more. I'll kill you. Kiba yelled savagely, as he charged at Naruto. As Kiba began to run towards him, Naruto gently tossed Akamaru's dead body to the side. He didn't move or reach for any weapons as the Inuzuka boy bared down on him. Just as Kiba was almost upon him, Naruto shot his arm out and caught Kiba by his throat. Kiba began to slash over and over at Naruto's chest, cutting into his flesh, either not caring or not knowing that Naruto had his hand on his throat. After a few moments of letting Kiba claw at him, Naruto sighed to himself. Well, I think I've given everyone a decent show. Time for the big finale and then end the match. Naruto thought to himself, preparing to end the fight. Naruto stared directly into Kiba's eyes and released a massive amount of killing intent. In his blind rage, Kiba continued his assault, when suddenly an ice-cold feeling of death washed over him. He could feel the blood gushing through his body destroyed 100 different ways, and all the while his body was perfectly fine, but the feeling of death wouldn't go away. It was coming from somewhere close, very close. Too close, in fact. Kiba began to have an even colder feeling grip him, when he realized it was coming from Naruto. I'm going to die. Naruto is going to kill me. Kiba thought to himself, unable to move or do anything but just stay. Everyone on the upper level was having their own thoughts about what they were feeling. All of the Jonin were wondering how the happy-go-lucky Naruto could release such a strong killing intent. It's just like with that Orochimaru guy. Sakura thought to herself, as she sunk down to her knees. The ever-quiet and statue-like Shino was shaking due to the buzzing of his bugs. The entire hive wanted him to carry them out of there. Choji actually dropped his bag of chips and left them as he felt the pressure of Naruto's killing intent. While not realizing it, Hinata had started to shed tears. Lee gripped the side of the railing hard. This feeling wasn't youthful at all. Temari stood as still as never thought someone could release such a strong intent like Gaara. Not bad, Doctor. Ibiki thought to himself, pleased with his apprentice's progress. As fast as it came, the killing intent was then gone. Kiba gasped for air as though he had been held under ice-cold water for days, so he was completely taken by surprise when suddenly a yell of Chakra Bukujutsu was heard and a blast of chakra went through his stomach as a fist plowed into said stomach. Kiba gripped his stomach as the air was forced out of him. Slowly, everything turned black and he fell over unconscious. Everyone stared in stunned silence. Kiba was down and there was no way he would be getting back up from a punch like that. How's our guest? Naruto asked aloud to what looked like no one. Everyone was surprised when they heard a voice from the ceiling answer. He's doing fine, but I think it's time he went to bed. Everyone looked up to see another Naruto on the ceiling, holding a living Akamaru. The Naruto jumped down and handed Akamaru over, before poofing out of existence. Naruto placed Akamaru on Kiba's unconscious body and stared down at the dog. When your idiot partner wakes up, tell him I said, he fought well and could have won. But when he used you and insulted my dream, he threw the match. Tell him he needs to stop being so predictable. See you around, Akamaru. Naruto said to the dog. As the med nins put Kiba onto the stretcher, Hayate called the match with Naruto was the victor. The members of Team 7 and Lee cheered for Naruto's victory. When the med nins had carried Kiba and Akamaru out of the room, Naruto blinked a bucket into his hands and hurled. Everyone reached back slightly as Naruto threw up into the bucket. After a moment, Naruto was finished and sent the bucket back to wherever he had called it from. The computer then began to flip through names as he walked the stairs. What should I do? Hinata asked herself as Naruto walked closer and closer to her. Ever since their days at the academy, Hinata had liked Naruto and wanted to get closer to him. Now was a perfect chance, but she didn't know how to start. Naruto-kun, she called out, as he walked past. Naruto stopped when he heard Hinata call his name. Hi, he asked as he turned around. Hinata didn't say anything, but presented him with a small jar. What's this? He asked, curious as to what it was. It's medical cream, Kurenai answered for her student. Oh, why for me, Hinata? Naruto asked the nervous girl in front of him. Just take it, Naruto, replied Kurenai. Thank you very much, Hinata. This is really nice of you, Naruto said to the brightly blushing girl. Naruto then went over to his team and stood between Sakura and Lee. As he rubbed some of the ointment on the last few remaining cuts from Kiba's clawing, Naruto felt a hand clasp his shoulder. Looking behind him, Naruto saw that it was his sensei. Naruto, we need to talk, Kakashi told his student. What do we need to talk about, sensei? First, how did you even learn some of those moves in releasing killing intent? I learned like everyone learns. I trained, Naruto replied, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. Second, why were these moves never shown before? Well, this is a hidden village filled with shinobi and any one of them could become a missing nin, so I'd just rather not have a criminal using my techniques. Plus, a shinobi never reveals everything he knows. Naruto answered again. Finally, we need to talk about that tattoo. What tattoo? Naruto asked dumbly, not seeing what his sensei was talking about. Kakashi just nodded his head at Naruto's right arm, causing said boy to look at his arm. It was only then that he saw it. In his haste of removing his jacket, Naruto forgot to place a henge over his Anbu apprentice tattoo. This wasn't going to end well for him. I'm in trouble, aren't I? He asked. For impersonation, very much so. Kakashi replied. Who says I'm impersonating anyone? I'm talking about my status being revealed. Naruto told him. Naruto, you can't expect me to believe that you're in that. Kakashi said to the blonde genin. Well, after the preliminary matches, you can ask the old man. However, any more talk of this subject in front of foreign shinobi would be seen as an act of treason, so let's enjoy the remaining fights and then, we will talk to the Hokage afterwards. Naruto said, leaving no room for argument. Naruto and Kakashi then both looked down into the arena to see that the 8th match was starting. It was Hyuga Hinata against Hyuga Neji. The match was clearly in Neji's favor. At the beginning, Neji kept spouting about destiny, while Naruto was educated on the Hyuga clan by Lee. Kakashi explained to Naruto and Sakura what made the Hyuga so powerful and famous was their bloodline limit, the Byakugan. Naruto had had his last nerve grated, listening to Neji go on about destiny and how people cannot change their fate. He shouted out that it was a bunch of bullshit and that people could change. The two cousins then began to fight. It seemed to be on even ground, so far. While they fought, Guy explained about the Hyuga clan's taijutsu style, the gentle fist. Rock Lee then told them how the inner coil system worked. It was at this point that it looked like Hinata was about to land a critical strike on Neji, when stopped the flow of her chakra and hit her with a critical strike instead. Kakashi then explained that he had closed her chakra pressure points, also called opening points, and how even with the Sharingan he was unable to see the opening points. Hinata was hit several more times and spat out more blood. One hit eventually got her on the ground. Just as the examiner was about to call the match, Naruto yelled out not to end the match yet. Sakura yelled at her teammate that the match was clearly over. However, to everyone's surprise, Hinata slowly began to stand. Neji asked his younger cousin why she was still choosing to stand. Hinata said that it wasn't her that was suffering, but it was he who was suffering with the destiny between the houses. This statement didn't sit well with Neji, who rushed at Hinata to kill her. Just as he was within striking distance, several of the Leaf Jonin senseis jumped into the arena to stop Neji from killing Hinata. Unfortunately, the damage was already done as Hinata started to go into cardiac arrest. Seeing her student in critical condition, Kurenai flipped Hinata over onto her back. Sakura, Lee, and Naruto jumped down into the arena to check on Hinata. "Hey Hinata, are you alright?" Naruto asked. "Her color doesn't look good," Sakura said from over his shoulder. It was true, most Hyuga were pale as far as skin tone went, but Hinata was more of a sickly white paste at the moment. "I could probably use it, but it's still in the experimental stages." Naruto thought to himself on how to help Hinata with her condition. "Hey, the loser over there," came Neji's voice from the side. Naruto looked up to see that Neji was talking to him. "I'd like to tell you two things. First, if you're a shinobi, then cut out the pathetic cheering of others. And second, a loser is a loser. They cannot change," Neji said to the annoying young blonde. Naruto stared at Neji with a calculating look. This guy had really been pissing him off, with his junk about fate and destiny. "Do you want to test me?" Naruto asked him in a low voice. Neji simply gave him a smirk as a reply. "That does it," Naruto thought to himself as he turned back to Hinata. Everyone watched, as Naruto hovered his hands above Hinata's stomach and chest. Soon dark green chakra covered his hands and was slowly covering Hinata's body. "What do you think you're doing?" Kurenai yelled, trying to stop Naruto from possibly further damaging her student. "Don't interrupt me," Naruto growled out to her, cause the Jonin to back off. A few moments later, Naruto was able to pull the blood that had been going into Hinata's organs and was able to repair said organs and give her some energy back. Soon the dark green chakra began to pull back until it was only holding the blood that he had removed. Hinata's eyes slowly fluttered open and the blurry images formed into Naruto. "Naruto-kun," she called out softly. "Hey Hinata, are you alright after that last attack?" the blonde shinobi asked her. Hinata looked around to see that she was on the arena floor instead of being in a hospital room. Everyone else nearly had their jaws on the floor seeing Hinata wake up so soon. She should have been out for a few weeks, after that beating she went through. "Hey Hinata, could I ask you for a favor?" Naruto asked the pale lavender-eyed girl. What do you need Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked, as she blushed slightly with Naruto being so close to her. "Can I have this?" he asked, showing her the blood. I guess so. Sure." Hinata replied confused. "Thanks, Hinata. You're the greatest." Hinata blushed slightly more at the comment. He then watched in wonder, along with everyone else, as Naruto began to separate something from the blood. It was much smaller. The blonde shinobi tossed the blood aside and released the chakra around it. He then blinked a syringe into his hands and began to force the strange substance into the barrel. "Well, here's to changing destiny," Naruto said as he looked at the syringe and then at Hinata. Hinata didn't understand what Naruto was talking about. She gasped in surprise, as Naruto turned the syringe onto himself, stabbed the back of his neck with the needle, and ejected himself with the strange substance. "Naruto, what the hell are you doing?" yelled Kakashi as he rushed over to his student, wondering if the boy had gone off the deep end. Naruto collapsed onto the ground in pain. This had to be the most painful thing in the world. His eyes felt like they were on fire. Unable to hold back anymore, Naruto let out a yell of pain and began to beat his fist down on the concrete blocks. The Jonin, examiners, Hinata, Sakura, Lee, Neji and everyone else watched as cracks began to appear from Naruto's hitting. A moment later, the yelling and hitting stopped. "Well, that was an experience unlike any other," Naruto said between gasping breaths. "Naruto-kun, what did you do?" Hinata asked him. "If you could show me your Byakugan for a moment, I'll show you." Naruto replied evasively. Not sure what Naruto was getting at, but complying anyway, Hinata went through the hand seals with a small cry of Byakugan, activated her family's bloodline limit. A moment later, she deactivated it. She then looked at Naruto, as they were standing up. Well, this is what I did. Naruto replied, as he started to go through a few hand seals. A few very familiar hand seals, in fact they were the same hand seals that Hinata had just done. Naruto, you can't be serious, Sakura had started to say, but was interrupted when Naruto cried out, Byakugan. Everyone stared at Naruto with open shock. What they were seeing should be possible, but it was. Hinata gazed at Naruto's face and said her first public cussing, holy shitting hell, what the Beelzebub is that? For years to come it would get laughs out of people. Right now, everyone was looking at a blue-eyed Byakugan in Naruto's eyes. Well, I can see now, why everyone is so impressed with this bloodline limit. Naruto said, taking in the 360-degree vision. Something wrong, there Neji? Naruto asked. The older boy as he turned around, facing him Byakugan to Byakugan. What is that? Neji asked, venom dripping from his voice. Oh, this? Naruto asked, pointing to his eyes before continuing, this is the Byakugan. I know that you baka. What I don't know is how you got it. Neji replied. This is the power of the Uzumaki clan. What's the matter Neji? Not so sure of the Hyuga clan's power anymore. Naruto asked him cryptically. No, because however the hell you got it, it has to be illegal and will be removed. Neji answered. Oh, it's perfectly legal. Naruto grinned menacingly. In accordance with the founding of Konoha, in the laws regarding giving bloodlines, bloodlines may be given either by the clan head or by the clan heir. As Hinata is the first-born child of Hyuga Hiashi, she is the heir of the Hyuga clan and is allowed to make such a decision. This can only be challenged by the current clan head in a fight, in which he may either fight or choose someone to represent him. Naruto replied smoothly, while silently thanking Kami that he had decided to read up on several of the laws when he started his businesses. Everyone was wondering how Naruto could possibly know that and if it was true. Heads turned to the Hokage for confirmation. It is true. The third Hokage replied. Granted, the law had been formed to allow for someone marrying into a clan, but Sarutobi just took a puff from his pipe and said, this can all be discussed in more detail later. Right now, we have 2 matches to finish. Everyone in the arena went back to the upper level, except the examiner and Hinata, who after being told by Naruto, went to get herself checked out by the med nins. The 9th match was between Gaara and Lee. For the first few minutes of the match, the fight was in favor of neither of them. Every time Lee attacked, it was blocked by Gaara's sand, and every time Gaara attacked with his sand, Lee moved out of the way. Guy explained to Sakura why Lee was only used taijutsu and not ninjutsu. The simple fact was, Lee couldn't. After the explanation, Guy looked as his student was won the fingers of the statue and told him to take them off. Surely, he doesn't mean, Naruto thought to himself as Lee took off his leg warmers and showed the weights underneath. Even after getting the seals, he kept the weights on. Naruto questioned as Lee stood up. Lee then dropped the weights to the ground, causing the entire tower to shake from the craters that were formed. Damn, no wonder I never beat him. Naruto thought with wide eyes, as Lee jumped into action. The next few strikes from Lee never hit Gaara, but each one of them got closer and closer. Slowly and surely, the attacks were breaking through Gaara's sand until eventually, Lee was able to strike Gaara with a powerful kick and cut his cheek open. Oh crap, was the unified thought from the Suna team. They all know how Gaara got at the sight of blood, but there was no telling how Gaara would react to his own, as he hadn't been cut in over 7 years. They watched as Lee hit Gaara hard enough to send him flying back. The Leaf Genin cheered for their comrade. As Gaara stood, pieces of sand were breaking off, revealing a crazed smile from Gaara underneath. Lee unwrapped the bandage wraps around his arms and began to run circles around Gaara, literally. Out of nowhere Lee appeared in front of Gaara and kicked him high into the air. While in the air, Lee wrapped the bandages around Gaara to prevent him from moving and began to pin them around as they headed back to the ground at a high speed. A split second before hitting the ground, Lee jumped away so he would be hurt and left Gaara crashing into the concrete blocks of the arena floor. Sakura cheered, claiming Lee had won. However, Sakura was wrong. The body of Gaara began to crumble, revealing that it was only sand and not Gaara at all. As Lee stared in shock along with everyone else, a figure slowly arose behind him. Lee turned around to see Gaara behind him. Gaara blasted Lee into the wall and then hit him with a massive wave of sand. Due to Lee's use of the Lotus technique, he was unable to dodge the attack. As Lee continued to get hounded by Gaara's sand, he remembered when he first became a genin and how Guy inspired him to be a genius of hard work. With that in mind, he dodged the next attack, his speed having returned to him. It is time for the Lotus to bloom twice, Guy said as Sakura questioned the return of Lee's speed. Guy, don't tell me you taught him, Kakashi started to say. Yes, he will open the 8 celestial inner body gates, Guy said. Kakashi then yelled at Guy for being a foolish teacher and teaching Lee the dangerous, extreme Lotus. Guy told Kakashi to shut up and let him train his students the best way he saw fit. Kakashi asked how many Lee was able to open and was shocked when Guy told him it was 5. Sakura then asked about the gates and received an explanation from Guy. Lee burst the life gate open as his skin changed red. His chakra swirled around him in a rage. Lee ran so fast that his speed tore apart the concrete blocks. Everyone felt the shockwave of Lee's kick as he kicked Gaara back into the air. Lee was moving too fast for Gaara's sand to keep up. From one side to the other, Lee kicked and punched Gaara, keeping him in the air. Gaara's sand armor was being punched off of him. Seeing that Gaara was still going with his sand armor, Lee opened the 5th gate, Limit Gate. Deciding to end this, Lee punched Gaara hard towards the ground. Before he hit the ground, Gaara was grabbed by Lee's bandage wraps and forced back into the air. Lee slammed his foot and hand hard into Gaara. As they rapidly descended down to the ground, the gourd on Gaara's back began to break apart and turned into sand to help cushion the blow. As the dust settled, Lee was shown to be on his side, by the massive crater that had been made. In the crater was Gaara, and though he was in pain, Gaara was still able to move better and faster than Lee. Gaara moved his sand over to Lee and his left arm and leg crushed by the sand. Naruto wanted to jump in, but knew it would be wrong, as Gaara had done nothing wrong. People died every year taking this exam. Gaara sent a massive wave of sand at Gaara, intent to kill him properly. However, his sand was knocked out of the way by Guy, who jumped in front of the sand to save his student. As Gaara looked into the hard eyes of Guy, his mind began to shatter. Why did you save him? Gaara asked in a stranded voice. He is my beloved comrade, Guy replied. Gaara then got up and began to walk away as the examiner called the match in his favor. However, gasps were heard and Guy turned around to see Lee standing behind him. Even after opening 5 gates, doing both the initial Lotus and the extreme Lotus, and having his left leg and arm crushed, Lee was still able to stand. Guy started to tell Lee that the match was over, only to see that Lee was unconscious. Even now the boy was ready to prove his ninja way. The Med Nin team rushed over as Guy put Lee on the ground. Naruto silently shed an unseen tear, for he was unable to do anything. The healing technique he used to help Hinata was still in the experimental stages and he got lucky that the damage was only to her organs, which was easy for the technique to heal. Bones were another matter completely and Lee's weren't just broken, they were crushed. One of the Med Nins called Guy over and said that due to the amount of injuries Lee could never be a shinobi again. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. He had never thought of Lee not being a shinobi. Who would he spar with? Who would cheer him on? Who would he cheer on? Who would be his hard-working buddy? Lee had been all of those things and more. What's Lee supposed to do now, Guy-sensei? Naruto asked his taijutsu instructor. Not getting an answer, Naruto went to yell at Guy but was stopped by Kakashi, who told him to back off. Lee was willing to risk his life for the silent promise Sasuke, and Neji all made each other. to win your matches and fight in the final stage against each other. Never forget that, Kakashi told him. Lee, even in the end you never realized it. The heavens will not allow someone that can only seek victory at the cost of himself to advance. Neji thought to himself as he watched his teammate being carried away. Kakashi apologized to Guy and reminded him that he was in the way for the final match. Guy, Naruto, and Kakashi went back to the upper level as the examiner called down the fighters for the final match, Choji vs. Dosu. The match started with Dosu insulting Choji about his weight. In response, Choji used his family's Nikuden Sensha technique to increase his size, making him look like a giant balloon. Choji then began to roll towards Dosu, to crush him, and with his ears hidden Dosu's melody arm would have no effect on him. Due to the slowness of the attack, Dosu kept avoiding it until Choji crashed into the wall. Dosu then hit him with his melody arm and gave the device a light tap which sent shockwaves throughout his body. Choji was forced out of his technique and had passed out due to dizziness. The match then ended, with Dosu as the winner. Well, on to the main event. Sarutobi thought to himself as the med nins carried Choji away. The winners of the preliminary matches, minus Sasuke, stood before the Hokage and the examiners. The Hokage congratulated the winners of the preliminary matches and told them that the third exam would start in 6 weeks. When asked why the matches weren't starting now, he said it was because the main matches would be seen by the whole village and several daimyos. Sarutobi had the genin draw slips of folded paper from a box with a number on the paper. After everyone called out their number, they were shown the order of the matches. First, would be Naruto against Neji. Next, would be Sasuke against Gaara. Then, it would be Kankuro against Shino. And finally, Temari would be facing off against whoever won the fight between Dosu and Shikamaru. Though he was calm on the outside, inside Naruto was bursting with excitement. He was going to get to face that Hyuga prick right off the bat and then either Gaara or Sasuke. When asked if only one was going to get the rank of Chunin due to it being set up like a tournament, Sarutobi said that it was so the judges could see how they performed in repeated fights and that it was possible for everyone to get the rank of Chunin. However, it was also possible for everyone to not get the rank of Chunin. Well then, thanks for all effort you showed during the trials. You are all dismissed until 6 weeks from now. The third Hokage replied, dismissing the genin. As the genin left the arena room, Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, and Kurenai came forward. We need to talk, Kakashi said to Sarutobi, Ibiki, and Anko. I'm in trouble, aren't I? Asked Naruto. I'm afraid you are, Naruto. Replied the third.